We see them every day.
Kwa wewe, food unatoa wapi?
Nalogota yani machupa. Unaona machupa ni kilogota. Na ulienda niuze. Kilo moja inatoka 10. Naenda kidogo ninakula chakula ya dhati.
Bado ukiona mtu hapa wenye amekuja, hajakuja hivi hivi. Kuna wale wamekuja na sinda mingi sana.
Hii ni panga hii. Hii ni panga.
Panga.
Jamani kwa mbeba panga, sikuwa hata namjua, kanipiga na panga.
We mostly ignore them. They are a menace, we assume. But what we don't realize is that they are the fruits of a decay in the social matrix of what we call the family unit.
There's a lot of problem in the families. Talk about domestic violence, talk about child abuse and neglect, talk about the stepmother phenomenon, talk about the single mothers raising the children and they have no time, they're busy eking out a living, so there's a lot of negligence. So these children go out, it's a cry for help.
They interpret any signal from the people they would wish to relate with negatively, and therefore they tend to retreat.
Kuna weird things we share women. Tunapata kwa base tuko watu kama 30 na tuko na mademu wawili ama watatu. Tuna live kushare. Tunashare labda kama ni huo dem tunashare nini, umenipata?
They are about 100 million worldwide according to the United Nations, and in Nairobi their growth is estimated to increase by 10% every year. That means by the year 2030, there will be over 500,000 street families in Kenya.
If the laws can be reinforced, we may not be having children in the street, particularly underage children.
But who are they? Where do they come from? Why are they so many? And how come society can't get rid of them?
Tunaona. Sina ndio ni hawa, si hawa.
It's 1:45 in Nairobi and our crew sets out on a mission. It's one we are not really sure of the outcome. We want to see if we can be able to spot any street family willing to talk to us.
Ni aje bro?
5 minutes into our drive, I come across a group of underage boys, all seemingly excited to see me. Tonight, my goal is simple. I want to give them a listening ear, hear their story, but most importantly, give them a voice.
Kama wewe sasa, una stay mtani wapi? Home ni wapi pale wazazi wako?
Kwenye tunaishi ni Ngong.
Ngong. Wazazi wako wanajua uko wapi?
Anajua niko tao.
Mbona uendi nyumbani? Mbona unalala nje?
Najua kitu yenye mimi nafanyanga kwangu. Mimi kama mimi mwenyewe hivi. Toko na venye naendanga, nikienda home narudi, naenda home narudi. Sasa mzee anakasirika, anasema hata nipiga machuma. Sasa ndio naona hiyo story ni ngori, acha niepe home, si ndio?
So unaogopa home utachapwa, ndio kama unatoroka unakuja street.
Unajua, yani kuambie kuna kitu yenye inaitangwa glue.
Iko wapi? Nimeona ulikuwa na moja imepotea.
Hiyo hata imechukuliwa ndio hii. Ndoso yangu.
So kuna kitu inaitwa glue. Nini mbaya na glue?
Glue inafanyanga hivi. Kuna venye na kuanga kama nini. Nasikia kama uko high sana. Unajua sasa inaku affect. Unaona hata ukienda home na miss tu bado tu unarudi huku. Hata ukienda home venye huku mtaa tunatusiana hivi. Ukienda home unatusi mzazi anakuchukulia tu anakupiga ama anakupeleka pahali pengine.
The sentiments by James is replicated across the lips of many of those whom we speak to. Their team leader is too shy to talk to us on camera, but those who do don't shy away from expressing their discontent with how society treats them and why they feel so misunderstood.
Juu kuna wale wanataka kuenda shule, kuna wale wanataka kuenda kazi. Unaona ukiona mtu hapa venye amekuja, hajakuja hivi hivi. Kuna wale wamekuja na sinda mingi.
Nikuulize, si umesema uko na mama mzazi, uko na shosho, uko na jamii. Unadhani kwamba jamii wako wanakupenda na wanakujali? Na uoni kwamba labda unawapatia wasiwasi kwamba hawajui labda pahali huko?
Natamani sana kutoka huko, hata nipate mahali kama student home hivi, nipeleke chuo ama pahali pa kukaa tu kuliko kuteseka huko. Unajua saa zingine makarao wanatupiga.
Kanjonyo anatushika, usitushike. Wacha kucheka. It's serious.
Often, the county government of Nairobi conducts occasional sweeps, loading the street families into lorries and whisking them away. One such sweep took place just days before President Barack Obama visited the country in July 2015. The move is, however, ineffective as the groups return to the city center after a few days. It's now close to 1 a.m. We drive further towards Pangani and Isli. We spot many of them preparing for bedtime. It's indeed a cold night, and the weatherman has predicted spouts of rainfall throughout the month. I decide to talk to a few others who have either chosen or been forced to live in the streets. Julius Musyoki here, for instance, says life at home with a strict grandmother was unbearable for a 12-year-old boy who is the second born in a family of 5.
Ni nini hasa uliona sasa hapa siwezi ishi na mama, afadhali nitoroke? Ulichapwa, ulifukuzwa ama nini? Kelele.
Yani wao chukua wengine, mimi ndio nachukua tu peke yangu. Hao wengine wanapenda, mimi ndio nachukiwa.
Kwa hivyo unaona ni kama nyumbani hawakupendi.
It's what Dr. Jonathan Maweu from the Multimedia University calls withdrawal symptoms occasioned by neglect and ill treatment by guardians or parents.
They interpret any signal from the people they would wish to relate with negatively, and therefore they tend to retreat.
It's the love and attention lacking at home that they hope to find on the streets. It's what psychologists have categorized as either push or pull factors. Push factors are those which repel the children from their domestic setup, anything that would make them want to run away from home. These could include domestic violence, poverty, mistreatment by step-parents, and even academic constraints, like in the case of 22-year-old Gideon Wambua, who has been on the streets for 9 years after he dropped out of school because he says his father refused to pay his school fees after his dad married a second wife.
Mungu siku moja atakuja kunitumia, watu watakuja kunisaidia na maendeleo yangu itaendelea. Na mimi usema street si mzuri, wazazi wanashangaa kijana wangu alienda wapi. Kila siku wazazi wako kelele.
Pull factors are what attract people to the streets. anything that works to make the street life lucrative, like easy money, search for food, or lack of recreation at home.
Parents who do not work hard enough to create time for their children, to talk to their children more, to facilitate their children in attending those social organizations where they can learn values, they easily lose them.
Peter Mweke is a former street urchin. He ended up on the streets after the woman who raised him passed away and her family failed to take him up. You see, Peter was actually sold off when he was still an infant. Today, he is revisiting Majengo slums where the trade-off took place.
Inasemekana kuna mtu alikuja na mtoto na akapata wamama wameketi tu somewhere tu hapa Kitui village. Sasa venye alipata wameketi, akauliza mama gani ataka mtoto, walikuwa ni washosho, walikuwa hapo wengi. Walikuwa wengi. Wote wakasema wanataka. One of the ladies wakaambiwa kama mtu ako na kitu kidogo atapewa mtoto. One of the ladies akatoa. Sasa huyo lady ndio alikuwa anaishi hapa Kitui village. Yeah.
Na ni nani huyo alileta huyo mtu?
Hajulikani.
We retrace the steps, walking through the trenches to get to Mweke's former home. The farther we go, the darker it becomes. It is at this doorstep where he grew up. The lady who raised him died in 2002 after 10 years after he had been bought for just 400 shillings.
400 shillings.
Yeah, 400 shillings.
You were bought for 400.
400 shillings.
Life on the streets wasn't easy for Peter. He would on occasion have to resort to desperate measures to get a meal.
Sometimes you beg, nobody anakupatia. So the worst thing unafanya unapigia mtu na mavi ndio kupatia food. Wapata umeomba, nobody anakusikiza. Sasa una use kupigia mtu na mavi ndio upate ye kitu ya kukula.
In 2005, at just age 11, Mweke was arrested after he was caught stealing. He would spend the next 3 years in jail as a juvenile delinquent before his release.
Wakati mimi nilikuwa naishi kwa street, nilikuja ngaza kutorokesha watoto wa huku, wa hiki jiji ngaza kuwatorokesha naishi nao kwa street. By the time nilikuja kushikwa, nilikuwa na karibu 40 members wale nimewatoa huku kwao nini kwa mafamilia zao nikawaleta kwa street.
Rende yako hiyo.
Kama rende yangu.
But tougher times on the streets awaited the miner. With no home, no family, and seemingly no origin, Peter Mweke's circumstances would have defined his destiny had he chosen so, but he didn't. He joined the St. John's Community Center, where he began rehabilitation under the tutorage of Sally Gatei, who has worked on rehabilitating street children for over 25 years now.
So our work is about restoring dignity, helping people identify the root causes of the problems they are going through and how they can address them, because they have the capacity to do so.
But enrolling Mweke would prove a challenge.
We didn't know his age. Mweke, actually, for him to get a birth certificate, we had to approximate. I think there's an assessment that is done. So we actually had to struggle to get a birth certificate for him. They did an assessment. He had to guess a birthday. So he guessed, I think, 20th October or 10th October. All that has just been through just trying and getting him to see that he has a future.
Alafu funny thing, my birth certificate nakuga imeandikwa mother's name X, father's name X. Kwa hivyo ilikuwa ni shida kubwa sana mimi kupata ma documents. Because naulizwa we Mweke ulitoka wapi? Kama mother's name is X, father's name X. Ulitoka wapi? Umeona? Hata age ilifanya tu kugesiwa ngambo wewe ni wa Oktoba 15. Wewe fanya birthday yako kwa hiyo Oktoba ndio ilikuwa imekaribia birthday ya karibu.
It is after his rehabilitation that Mweke truly transformed, even coming out with a music video in 2011 that made him a darling among his peers still on the streets. Today, Mweke runs his own organization called Street Changers, seeking to change the fate of many others who are on the streets just like he was. After our interview, he introduces us to this young man whom he rescued from the streets just days ago. He promises to mentor him only if the boy agrees to enroll at a community center for rehabilitation. The boy agrees. It's a bright and sunny Tuesday morning in Nairobi. At this open ground in Mlango Kubwa area, we find dozens of street families, men, women, the young and the old. The purpose of today's event is to scout for talent, but the reason why most of them are here is because usually the organizers give out free meals at the end of the activities. It is here that I meet David Dinda, the man in charge of talent development among those who live on the streets. He works for the Committee of Medical Collaborators and links community health volunteers with street families who often cannot access healthcare services. Today, however, he's scouting for talent.
So mimi na coordinate sports aswa nikiwa hapa, alafu najua sports na vitu zote zina involve aswa mwili na akili. Aswa ili tuhakikishe tunaangalia mental part ya vijana iko poa, na pia skill wise, na aswa ukiangalia physique wanapata like kuna wale unaona ni wanyonge, tunajaribu kuwatoa kwa hiyo unyonge tuwaweke at least wako stronger.
His team has already identified this young man as having great skill as a goalkeeper. He will probably be trained some more before being enrolled to a Division 2 soccer club if all goes well. What many see as a menace, David and his team view as a pool of skills and talent just waiting to be nurtured.
Ukiangalia wengi wamewatenga, wengi wakiona ni watu hawana maana. So unajua sisi tunaona ni very important persons kwetu, unaona, kwa sababu sisi ndio unaona like tuko karibu na hao kwa njia moja ama njia nyingine. Ukisikia story yao watu wengi utakuwa unagundua sio kupenda kwake kwa streets. Kuna vitu kadhaa zilifanyika pale na ni venye amekosa mtu wa kumuelewa. Ndio maana unaona like amekaa pale ana issue, lakini akipata msana muelewa, sisi unajua like kazi yetu aswa ni kuwaelewa.
As is tradition, after the day's activities, lunch is served. As many queue to get what will most likely be their only meal for the day, we notice this lady, perhaps the oldest among the group. She clutches onto her two children, the only valuable things she possesses, she tells me. Lucy Nyambura has been homeless for more than 3 years. She crashes such events only so that she can feed her child, if not herself.
Yafurahia. Si maisha mazuri, ni maisha mabaya. Sijafurahia. Ile shida tu. Lakini tunataka kukaa maisha mazuri.
The meal paid for by today's event organizers would on any other day cost me just 60 shillings. It's an amount that is more of a mirage than a reality for many here. Lucy is lucky. At least for today, her baby will not go to sleep hungry. Tomorrow is, however, another struggle. Today, her plight has been understood by David and his crew. It's the kind of understanding that event organizers here believe can help move many of them from the streets back to their homes.
I think Kenyans should start to treat them differently because, for instance, I'm foreigners and I usually come to Mlango Kubwa alone. I never had any problem of security and I can leave even my bag with them. We went for a function on Saturday. I left one of them with my camera. He just gave me back at the end of the function.
Elena works for the Group for Transcultural Relations, an Italian-based NGO which runs the Boresha Maisha initiative for alternative living for street families. They hold such events twice every week, hoping to embrace rather than shun away many who society view as dejects.
Every week we meet 140, 150 beneficiaries, and as you can see, most of them are boys. We only have a few ladies, which are mainly street mothers, and we also try to engage them. With the ladies, we mainly do health talks, and we also do some handcraft, and we also talk to them about family planning and hygiene, taking care of the children. But with the boys, we usually play football, we do talents development, and we also do motivational talks on different topics.
Elena's work is complemented by the likes of Faris Nyaga, who runs the Isili Community Center, where street families have found a home for over 4 decades.
Right now we've got 70 plus boys within the center whom we've rescued. A good percentage is already enrolled into primary school. That is the reschooling approach. And also a good percentage is in vocational skills, and a few whom have already joined high school.
Among those in vocational training is John Mburu, who is taking up a class in mechanics. He had run away from his home in Thika in search of a better life on the streets of Nairobi before he was rescued and brought to this community center.
Na ninajivunia kuwa mwana mechanic kwa sababu sasa hivi vitu ambazo najua ni vitu ambazo sikukuwa nafahamu. Ka hii gari naweza ifanya nitoe lining, karipa nifungue na nifanye service vizuri.
Mburu is like so many others here, seeking a better life for themselves away from the streets. The youngest occupant of the center is this boy, just 2 years old, rescued from the streets after his mother gave him up for care because she couldn't afford him a decent life. The center has a capacity of about 100 and acts as a home for boys only, where they are equipped with the much-needed skills for livelihood. Paul Mwai is one of the 3 social workers who assist the boys in rehabilitation.
So like this is now one of the
This is one of the sleeping facility where they come and enjoy their night there. As we also provide, this is one of the basic needs. Because in the streets, they don't spend this way.
Yeah, they don't have access to a mattress.
Yeah, they don't have access to mattress, they are rained on. So when they come here, you provide how much we can be able so that they feel comfortable and they're able now to regain strength and also to come up to regain their mind and their thoughts so that they can able to remember their families.
Either way, some manage to slip through the cracks and go back to the streets.
Why would a kid leave such a comfort? Why would you leave a mattress and a pillow and a blanket and a roof over your head to go and sleep in the streets in the cold?
Yeah, generally that's also a good, very good thing that we also wonder why there's some abscond. But we came to do a research concerning them, and we found that this one thing called peer pressure. So within their bases, within the streets, they influence each other. They feel that that is the freedom they like and they want to spend in their lifetime. Because there, you not get anybody telling you, you must wake up at this time, you must do this and this, you must be smart. So they feel that is their own place and their own joy and their own heaven. But also another thing case is urge of drugs. If you get used to drugs, you always go back there.
Kuna madawa ambazo watumia, kuna madawa ambazo zaitwa mawaiti. Wameza, kichwa yako yachangamka, yani wafeel tu kiwa comfortable kila wakati. Sasa
mawaiti ni nini? Nimeisikia sana.
Mawaiti
mtu wa kwanza kulitajia.
Mawaiti ni dawa ambayo ya white ni tembe. Unameza baada ya masekunde tu hivi unasikia kichwa imeanza kuchangamka.
I'm told that the drug, street named as Mawait, is often used at mental facilities to calm the nerves of patients and is not sold over the counter. Many street kids use that and glue to get a high that makes most of them not coherent, even in their speech, like I witnessed.
What about madhe? Auoni kama madhe wako wako na wasiwasi place huko?
Najua kuna wasiwasi lakini najua ni mimi.
Hata mimi nilikuwa mgondi. Nikapigwa risasi hapa kwa mgongo.
Wapi? Hiyo ni ulikuwa umefanya nini ukapigwa risasi? Ulikuwa umefanya nini?
Yani nilikuwa nakimbia.
Ati ulikuwa umedu?
Acha nilikuwa nakimbia.
Mtu ako serious. Mimi niko serious.
The efforts by people like Sally Gatei to mentor former street children, Faris Nyaga to rehabilitate them, and David Dinda to discover their untapped potential is only but a drop in the ocean in the fight to keep families off the streets. So then, where is the government in this fight? To answer that question, I sat down with the secretary of the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund, Robert Njogu. The government fund is meant to assist in the rehabilitation process.
As much as we don't want to see them, I don't think the answer is to arrest them and put them in jail or put them in police cells. That only aggravates their anger, and when they come out, which they will, because they basically have not committed any crime, they will end up being more angry and more aggressive.
We have funded over 35 institutions which are home for over 6,000 street families to the tune of 270 million for this financial year alone.
But for such huge funds, very little progress appears to be made on the ground. The trust fund had stayed over a year without a board, therefore curtailing any efforts towards decision-making needed to assist street families located in the various rehabilitation centers in the country, totaling close to 6,000 people.
6,000 is like a drop in the ocean compared to the huge numbers of street families in this country. So, as much as we are doing our best, it might appear, particularly in the eyes of the public, and particularly Nairobi, which is the most affected, like we are doing nothing. But we have been doing a lot towards this end.
These are being addressed, and we hope that in the not too distant future, we'll be able to come up with answers. By answers, I mean solutions to these problems.
We link up with Mweke nearly a month after we first met him. Today, he's using his connections to help 3 street boys realize their music prowess. We arrive at the Stray Music Studios in Donholm, where the boys are up for their first ever music audio recording. Mweke hopes by helping them nurture their talent, one day their efforts may pay well enough to get them off the streets.
Hawa vijana wako sawa. Kwanza nimependa venye wako ni watu wako na confidence. Unajua watu wengi wanakuja hapa kama vijana wa street analeta mostly wanakuagawana ile hawajiamini, unajua, lakini unaona wameimba vizuri, wamejiexpress, yani unajua kimuziki ni nini wanaweza fanya kimuziki, wamejiexpress, na hiyo kitu inakuaga so paramount kwa mtu anaanza kwanza kujielewa, na hiyo nimefurahia, na nadhani hawa tutawaka na wao yani straight up.
There is no law governing the handling of this demographic. Not even their numbers are well known. Perhaps they ought to be included in this year's census count. That way, proper planning can be done if a concrete figure of how many they are has been established. The Nairobi County government is currently constructing a rehabilitation center in Ruai meant to host more than 1,000 street families. Either way, the efforts of so many others like this security officer, whom the boys have christened the director, who helps them feed them, may go unrecognized.
Ile kitu wanakosa ni mwongozo. Kwa sababu kama sisi kwa security, hao ni security wenzetu. Kwa mfano wao wananijua.
Tunapaki gari.
Hapa hivi sasa hizi nikitembea barabara hata saa ngapi, huwezi nichokoza hata nikiona uniform bila. Ukiniguza wananijua, watanitetea. So ni watu wazuri, ni vile tu hawajapata njia ama vile si waizi. Although kuna wachache ndani yao ambao sio wazuri, lakini wengi wao hapo si ati ni waizi. Hapana.
Wewe vile naona umri wako, naona nikaa wewe ni mzazi. Ni watoto ambao ni umri labda wa watoto wako. Ukiona watoto wanalala kwa street, wewe labda uko na watoto wako nyumbani vitandani. What do you think is the problem? Why do we have these kids outside?
Nishajaribu kuongea na wengi, nishawahoji. Problem inatokana na nyumbani, poverty. Unaelewa? Unakuta pengine baba ni mlevi, mama ni mlevi. Mtu hii akikosa malezi akiwa home, anahepa, akikosa chakula, atatoroka tu. At the end of the day anabaki wapi? Kwa street. Inanipain mimi kama mzazi, vile umeniuliza. Ndio sababu hata mimi hujitolea na wapea chakula yote. Na ikiwezekana hata saa zingine wakuja kinambiaje soja sina kwa tunakulala, mimi wapatia kama niko nazo na watafutia. So sasa ni watu wabaya, ni shida inafanya wako hapa.
Jumapili na sio lazima mwe wawili peke yako, we kalihubiri tukalihubiri neno la Bwana, sio lazima iwe Jumapili na sio lazima mwe wawili.
And so Mweke and many others speak to the younger generation, remaining undeterred in their quest to ensure such young ones never end up on the streets, and hoping those already there will ultimately find their way back home.
Vision yangu ni kuona 0 street children in Kenya, not in Nairobi, in Kenya, 0. Na nikiangalia vision yangu ndio niweze kuachieve, naangalia other partners wale tuko nao wenye tunafanya hii shughuli, most of them kuna wale wana cover schools, kuna wale wanapatiana shelter kama ma homes, kuna mali tuna refer homes.
I think policies need to be coined or designed that can look at how can we cater for the children without taking them to institutions, because that is not a solution. If they're already big enough to go to school, then we can address supporting children to get back to school. If they're already in the family way, can we offer opportunities for either talent development, opportunities for vocational training, opportunities for what is their potential, what is it that they can do, because some of them will not go back to school.
One of the solutions should be prevention, because if you prevent them to come to the streets, they won't be there today or tomorrow. So there is a need for creating security nets around them, where also the community help them.
As a country, we have not done enough. And therefore, either we act like we don't see, because if we had acted accordingly, we would have taken action to seize the situation. But so far, I think we tend to sweep the problem under the carpet.
Matumaini yangu kwa watoto wangu, mimi naweza penda wasome, wapate elimu, hata watoto wengine wako hapa. Wasikule shida, sio wangu tu. Watoto ni watoto. Watoto wote wapate shule, wapate maisha mazuri, wakae mahali pazuri. Tusikuwe tunalala nje. Mtoto asome, apate elimu. Mali hata teseka, anakula, anakunywa, anasoma.
Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
This is KTN News.